All right, so everyone knows Eli Lilly, right? I mean, they're like the talk of the town these days thanks to those GLP-1 drugs. They've got
Oh, yeah.
Mounjaro, Zepbound.
Huge.
They've really shaken things up in a big way when it comes to how we think about managing weight and treating diabetes.
Absolutely, yeah.
And just to give you an idea of the impact we're talking about, Zepbound, just that one drug brought in almost $5 billion.
Wow.
In 2024, its first full calendar year on the market.
It's impressive.
It's kind of hard to ignore those numbers.
It really speaks to the demand that's out there and
Yeah.
And the effectiveness that they've been able to demonstrate in addressing those health needs.
For sure. But while all eyes are on these like blockbuster medications, we thought it would be interesting to explore another avenue for Eli Lilly that could hold some real potential.
Okay.
And maybe even some surprises in 2025.
I like surprises.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that's what we're diving into today. We're going to kind of look past the GLP-1 success story, which everyone's talking about. And we're going to delve into Eli Lilly's prospects in the Alzheimer's disease market.
Interesting.
Particularly with their newly FDA-approved drug, Kisunla.
Okay.
And if you're the kind of person who likes to look for insights that go a bit deeper,
Beyond the headlines.
exactly beyond the headlines, then this deep dive could be really insightful for you.
All right. I'm ready to dive in.
Let's do it. So first, we got to set the scene. When we talk about the Alzheimer's disease market globally, we're already looking at a pretty sizable market. Like Market.us estimates it to be around $8 billion.
Wow, that's pretty substantial.
It is. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Projections suggest that this market could balloon to about $31 billion by 2033.
Okay, so we're talking major growth.
Huge growth potential in a relatively short period of time, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And what I find particularly fascinating is how that substantial market size sort of intersects with the current treatment landscape. Because, despite this being such a large market, the Alzheimer's treatment space is still, in many ways, quite fragmented. You don't have a single dominant therapy that everyone's using.
You're right. And there are existing treatments out there. One that's been making some noise is called Leqembi.
Leqembi, okay.
And that one's developed by Biogen and Eisai in collaboration.
Got it.
It received FDA approval back in July of 2023, and they actually commercially launched it in December of that year.
Oh, so it's still fairly new.
Very, very new, still in its early stages of market presence.
Right.
So when we look at Leqembi's initial performance, it gives us some valuable context. Eisai reported sales of about 29.6 billion yen for Leqembi. That was over a 9-month period from April to December of 2024.
Okay.
Which, if you convert that, it comes out to roughly $198 million.
All right.
Not bad.
So those are the numbers we're looking at.
Yeah, but here's a key detail that came out in one of our sources. Eisai actually had to revise their full-year sales forecast for Leqembi downwards.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They initially projected about 56.5 billion yen, but they adjusted that to 42.5 billion yen.
That's a pretty significant adjustment.
It is. And the primary reason they gave was delays they ran into with their U.S. launch.
I see. So that downward revision, it's something to definitely take note of. And I think if we kind of zoom out a little bit and look at the bigger picture, the U.S. market is really crucial for Eisai's Alzheimer's business.
For sure.
Any kind of hiccups they have with their U.S. launch are going to have ripple effects on their overall financial projections.
Exactly. And this brings us right to Eli Lilly's contender in this space.
Okay.
Kisunla. They snagged FDA approval in the summer of last year, marking their entry into the Alzheimer's disease treatment game.
Interesting.
Okay.
So just to recap, we've got a big market, right? Well, like lots of growth potential projected. We've got a treatment landscape that doesn't have a single dominant player.
Right.
And we've got one of the key players, Leqembi, experiencing a few hiccups, particularly in a really important market like the U.S.
It's setting the stage.
This is where things get interesting for Kisunla.
Exactly. The Motley Fool analysis that we looked at, they specifically highlighted that this slower than expected U.S. rollout of Leqembi could be a significant opportunity for Eli Lilly and for Kisunla.
I see.
You've got this big market that's really eager for treatments that work.
Absolutely.
You've got a relatively open playing field when it comes to competition.
Yeah.
And you've got the current frontrunner kind of stumbling a bit.
Yeah, it creates a pretty unique situation.
Yeah, it's a very interesting set of circumstances. Now, of course, we got to talk about this from an investment angle.
Of course. Yeah, so The article mentions that Eli Lilly's forward price to earnings, their PE multiple is currently sitting at around 36.
36.
And for those who aren't super familiar with that, it's essentially a way to assess how a company's valued compared to its earnings.
I gotcha.
So we're at 36.
Which, and this is interesting,
yeah,
looking at the data we've got, that 36 is almost 40% lower than it was just a year ago.
Whoa, that's a pretty big drop.
That's a big compression, yeah.
Pretty substantial compression in valuation.
Oh, yeah.
So the question is, why?
Right.
Why this decrease despite, all the success they've had with those GLP-1 drugs?
Well, and the article points to one possible factor, which is, the rise of these non-FDA approved generic GLP-1 drug options.
Okay.
So basically, while Mounjaro and Zepbound are doing really, really well, the market might be, starting to price in some concerns about competition from these less regulated alternatives.
Interesting. So they're factoring in the possibility of a more competitive landscape.
Exactly.
Right.
And Eli Lilly's response seems to be, scaling up their manufacturing and getting a little more aggressive on pricing.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, right? If you're facing that kind of potential competition, you want to be able to
ramp up production.
You want to be able to compete on price.
Yep.
So it's a logical move.
So when you take this valuation compression and you combine it with the potential upside of Kisunla, in this growing Alzheimer's market, the argument for a good opportunity starts to really, really take shape.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And the article actually goes as far as to say that this situation could present a compelling opportunity for anyone looking at the stock.
Compelling opportunity. All right. I like the sound of that.
So let's break that down a little bit. You've got this, major pharmaceutical company with these wildly successful drugs in a sector that's, just booming.
Right.
But their overall valuation's taken a hit.
Right.
At the same time, they're rolling out this new drug. Yeah.
In another huge market, the Alzheimer's market, which is also expanding rapidly.
Right.
And in that market, the current leader's having some trouble.
Exactly. So the key takeaway here, I think, is that it's really important to look beyond the headlines.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, the success of the GLP-1 drugs is undeniable. That's driving their performance right now.
For sure.
But it's not the whole story.
Right.
The Alzheimer's market is a huge opportunity.
Huge.
And Kisunla's entrance, especially with the competitor's kind of shaky launch, that could be a real game changer moving forward.
So what I'm hearing you say is it's all about looking at the long game.
Absolutely. It's about understanding that there's more to the story than just the current trends. And recognizing that sometimes those less obvious areas can hold some really significant potential.
So for anyone listening, pay attention to 2025.
Yes.
It could be a pivotal year for Eli Lilly as we see how Kisunla performs in the Alzheimer's market. And I think this is something that everyone should be watching.
Absolutely.
Not just people who follow the pharmaceutical industry closely, but anyone who's looking for investment opportunities.
For sure. Because sometimes the real opportunities are in those areas that haven't quite caught the mainstream attention yet.
Right. They're under the radar.
Exactly.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with something to think about.
Okay, I'm ready.
We all know there's a huge need for effective Alzheimer's treatments.
Absolutely.
And bringing new drugs to market is a really complex process.
Oh, it's incredibly complex.
So my question for you and for everyone listening is this. What other factors, beyond just that initial launch phase, might determine the long-term success of drugs like Kisunla? What are the things that will really shape their impact?
Wow, that's a great question.
In the years to come. It's something to ponder, right?
Definitely. Lots to consider there. It's not just about getting the drug out there. It's about everything that comes after.
Exactly. It's the whole journey.
All right. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap things up for today. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
My pleasure. Always great to be here.
And we'll catch you next time.